I would like to begin today by talking about Iran. This is month 5 of our supposedly 3-week war with Iran. Remember, the Iranian government was supposed to collapse like a house of cards. Anybody with any background in the Middle East said at the time that that was absurd, that the Iranians were not going to fold and just fall apart. And of course, they haven't. Well, we've just had potentially our biggest escalation of the war so far, at least in weeks, maybe months, after 2 U.S. servicemen were killed in Iranian airstrikes in Jordan. There's a third serviceman who is missing and presumed to be dead. Here we have a cable news host learning in real time that the United States may not have been fully honest with the American people about Iran's missile capabilities. I want to show you this clip, and then we'll talk about it.
You know, CENTCOM says that there will be outsized action in retaliation, but I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at Gulf countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
Yes, and if you look at the numbers of missiles that they've been able to fire off from the beginning of this war, late February, early March, and what they're able to do now, it is very seriously degraded.
So Maria Bartiromo used the word obliterated. We had obliterated Iran's military. No, we haven't. We have degraded Iran's military, but obliterated, that's a word that the president used. That's just simply not true. It's not obliterated. I want to say a couple of other things that I've said in the past, but they're important and they bear repeating here. Iran has 93 million people. 93 million people. We couldn't defeat Afghanistan with less than a quarter of that population. We couldn't defeat Iraq with less than half that population. Iran has 93 million people, and it is the size of the whole of Western Europe. And it's surrounded on 3 sides by formidable mountain ranges. If we wanted to really overthrow the Iranian government and replace the Iranian government, we would need 1 million ground troops. It's not going to happen. So sure, we've degraded the Iranian military. Yes, the United States and Israel have taken out, for the most part, the Iranian military leadership. But there's always going to be somebody else that pops back up into a leadership role. And where the Iranians have had their successes has been with the use of suicide drones. Now, we're using $100,000 missiles against $5,000 or $10,000 drones. The Iranians can produce tens of thousands of drones. And what they don't produce, they just buy from the Chinese and the Russians. And they just send wave after wave after wave of drones. So listen, if you've got this cheap drone and you just strap some explosives to it, and then you send it to its target, then what do you care if it's shot down by a $100,000 missile? It doesn't make any difference. In the meantime, the Iranians have been engaged in this tit for tat, where the Iranians hit a desalination plant in Kuwait yesterday. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Why hit a desalination plant? That's technically a war crime. You can't hit infrastructure. So why would the Iranians be hitting critical infrastructure? It's because the United States and Israel are hitting critical infrastructure in Iran. And just a day earlier, the U.S. blew up an Iranian desalination plant. So these are tit for tat attacks. There's additional breaking news this morning. According to the New York Times, the U.S. has withheld information on dozens of military injuries from the Iran war. Can we go to that? There it is right there. In the week leading up to the Iranian attack on Friday that killed two U.S. soldiers and left 1 service member missing in Jordan, Iran carried out 3 other strikes against U.S. forces in the country. Those attacks injured dozens of U.S. service members and damaged several helicopters, but the Pentagon did not disclose the earlier strikes nor the casualties and damage they inflicted. Forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but they are not compelled. The Pentagon is not compelled to report these figures. There's no law that says they have to report these figures. And why isn't there no law? Or why is there no law? It's because Congress is asleep at the switch, and they never passed any such law. And so the Pentagon says, why would we inform Capitol Hill? Why would we inform the media that our helicopters are being destroyed by Iran, or we have dozens of people injured, when we don't have to? And that's exactly what's happening. So anyway, in this episode, I want to answer a simple question. Is the U.S. government giving the public an accurate picture of Iran's military capabilities? And what does that mean for where this war goes next? We're going to take a short break and address that question. Look, I spent my career in the CIA. I know exactly how easy it is to find someone when you have their name and a little patience. And here's what should scare you. These days, you don't need to be a spy to do it. Your name, your home address, your phone number, details about your family, it's all sitting right there online, compiled by data brokers and sold to anyone with a credit card. I've made my share of enemies over the years. And since going public on the CIA's torture program, I've gotten a lot more strangers who know who I am. So safety and security are not abstractions to me. They're daily concerns. All that personal data floating around the internet has real world consequences. And honestly, most people have no idea how exposed they are. That's why I personally use Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes your personal information from hundreds of data broker websites. You sign up, you tell them exactly what information you want taken down, and their experts handle it from there. They send you regular, personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they removed. And it's not a one-time thing either. Delete Me is always working in the background, constantly monitoring and removing the information that you don't want to be out there. In plain terms, they do the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information off these broker sites. For someone like me, that peace of mind is worth a lot. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, today get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/JKBR and use promo code JKBR at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/JKBR and enter code JKBR at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/JKBR, code JKBR. There is no question that the United States has inflicted extraordinary damage on Iran. Let's take a look at a map of strikes in Iran. This is something that our producer John Ball found that is just dramatic to me. Now, you can see with the little American flag and the little Israeli flag who hit what where. It's incredible. It's incredible, and it's widespread. We can zoom in and look at specifically infrastructure damage, the nuclear facilities that were hit last October. That's sort of overtaken by events. But the United States and Israel are hitting Iran all over the country. Conversely, if you look at the broader map that JB is showing us, the Iranians are retaliating over a very broad area. I mean, look at Israel, look at Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain. They're inflicting serious damage. This goes to a deeper question, too. If you are a Gulf leader, you're the emir of one of these countries, and you have invited the United States into your country, you've given the United States a military base to protect your country, and the U.S. can't protect your country, not even from cheap Iranian drones, then you've got to be rethinking your foreign policy. Why do I have the Americans here if the Iranians can just bomb me at will? This also goes to something deeper, and that's the changing nature of warfare. We have two aircraft carrier strike groups in the Arabian Sea. Okay, what good are they? They can bomb things easy enough, but they can't protect against these drones. If you look at the southwestern tip of Yemen, where it comes to within, right there, it comes to within 16 miles of Djibouti. The United States has a camp there, Camp Lemonnier, which the French gave us. The French pulled out of Djibouti. It was a French colony, and they walked away from that camp. Oddly enough, we share that camp with China. I've been there. I've seen it for myself. There's literally a chain link fence down the middle of the camp, and half of it is American and the other half is Chinese. Funny enough, all the doors of the Chinese hangars are open and all the doors of the American hangars are closed because we don't want anybody to see the jets that we have in there. Anyway, that little strip of water that you see there is called the Bab el-Mandeb. The Bab el-Mandeb is the entrance to the Red Sea. And what's at the northernmost part of the Red Sea? The Suez Canal. A gigantic proportion of the world's trade goes through the Suez Canal and has to exit through the Bab el-Mandeb. Now, you also see farther to the east, the Strait of Hormuz. Well, more than a third of the world's oil has to go through the Strait of Hormuz. So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed and the Bab el-Mandeb is being closed by the Houthis in Yemen, then global trade screeches to a halt and everybody's screwed. Get used to $4 a gallon gas, and we're probably lucky at this point that it's only $4 a gallon. But everything else is going to go up because of this potential closure of the Bab el-Mandeb. And to the best of my knowledge, nobody's really talking about the Bab el-Mandeb right now. My friend Chris Hedges has an absolutely wonderful podcast. If you don't know Chris Hedges, I strongly urge you to get to know him and his work. Chris is he's the former Baghdad bureau chief, Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. He is a Pulitzer Prize winner. He was actually fired by the Times because he was opposed to the Iraq War. But let's go to a clip of the start of Chris's most recent episode of his podcast to give you an overview of what's happening today in the region.
U.S. forces launched new airstrikes last night against Iran for the 8th straight day, following the deaths of 2 U.S. service members at an airbase in Jordan that came under Iranian attack. The deaths were the 15th and 16th among U.S. service members in the war with Iran. The U.S. has also reimposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports to halt its shipments of crude oil. Iran's supreme leader, in response, issued a statement calling Donald Trump's signature on the Memorandum of Understanding, which initiated the now broken ceasefire, quote, worthless and invalid, end quote, and suspended the agreement. The latest round of strikes is ominous. They include attacks by the U.S. on Iranian desalination plants, which remove salt from seawater, and power plants that provide the electricity to carry out water production. Iran has responded by bombing desalination plants in Kuwait, where U.S. warplanes are based. Nations in the Gulf rely almost exclusively on desalination plants to provide fresh water. In Kuwait, about 90% of drinking water comes from desalination, along with roughly 86% in Oman and about 70% in Saudi Arabia. There are hundreds of desalination plants situated along the Persian Gulf. The water supply for millions of people is within range of Iranian missiles and drones. Should the targeting of desalination plants continue, it will trigger a humanitarian crisis. Iran has once again closed, for the most part, the Strait of Hormuz to shipping. U.S. bases in the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan have been attacked. Iran has called on their Houthi allies in Yemen to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait should the U.S. attack Iran's power infrastructure. This would block all shipments out of the Gulf, including oil from Saudi Arabia. Trump's escalation is a huge gamble for the United States, whose strategic petroleum reserve has fallen to its lowest level since 1983. Its stockpiles of missiles and interceptors are also being exhausted. After initially projecting that the war would cost $29 billion, the Pentagon is now saying it needs $80 billion. Once indirect costs, such as increases in food and fuel prices, are added, the cost to consumers and taxpayers is about $132 billion and rising. Where do we go from here? Will the steady escalation ignite a regional war? What will the renewed fighting do to the global economy? And will a negotiated settlement at this point even be possible?
That is pretty doggone grim. $132 billion in costs. You know, that's thousands and thousands of dollars for each American taxpayer, not even a taxpayer, for each American citizen. So this is a bigger problem over a longer term than our government has led us to believe. According to Iranian state media this morning, too, one of the U.S. strikes hit a nuclear power plant that was still under construction. That would be a violation of international law if that turns out to be true. Now, step back and look at the broader trajectory of this war. Politically, the United States has made clear that it does not want a large-scale ground invasion. That would be impossible to achieve. That leaves Washington relying primarily on air and naval power. But air campaigns can only do so much against an enemy whose missiles and drones are dispersed, they're mobile, and they're buried underground in many cases. That's why, despite months of intensive bombing, Iran retains the ability to strike U.S. partners all across the region. It's not just Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, which are right there, a hop, skip, and a jump from Iran. It's Jordan, it's Iraq, and it's in the Red Sea. So even though the U.S. threatened to go after Iran's civilian infrastructure, like its bridges, its power plants, its desal plants, Iran still retains an ability to go after similar structures in Jordan, in Kuwait, and elsewhere around the Gulf Cooperation Council states. That creates a strategic dilemma for the White House. U.S. allies in the region have little interest in seeing this conflict expand. I'll rephrase, they have zero interest in seeing this conflict expand into attacks on infrastructure, civilian infrastructure inside their own borders. That would be a disaster. And despite the deaths of another 2 U.S. service members this week, the administration has so far stopped short of another major escalation against Iranian civilian infrastructure. I'm going to say that the United States probably will not ramp up attacks on civilian infrastructure. So I want to give a grade of D for how this war is going. If the goal was to murder the Iranian leadership, all right, they've all been murdered. If the goal was to take out the Iranian military leadership, they're gone. They're all dead. Almost all the nuclear scientists are dead. So why are we still fighting in Iran? I think that this war is going to go for months. I've been saying from the beginning that we're probably all going to wake up one day and Donald Trump will have posted on Truth Social, "We won. It's all over. Everybody's coming home. It's the greatest victory in the history of victories," et cetera, et cetera. And really, in the end, nothing's going to change. What if the way money works is about to change? Not someday, not hypothetically, but right now. China and the United States are both making moves that suggest we could be heading towards something that the world hasn't seen in more than 50 years, a return to gold-backed money, or something very close to it. China is shutting down paper gold trading at 4 of its biggest banks, all on the same day. And they're building a new system that settles in physical gold instead. Physical gold. On our side, the government is sitting on more than 8,000 tons of gold, still valued at $42 an ounce on the books. Legislation to fix that is already in Congress. If both superpowers start anchoring their currencies to gold, what happens to the price? And more importantly, what happens to every dollar in your retirement that isn't backed by anything at all? That's the question a free report from American Alternative Assets answers. It's called The Day Money Changes Forever. And if you have an IRA or a 401k, you need to read it right now. Get your free copy at johnlovesgold.com. That's johnlovesgold.com, or call toll free 1-888-GOLD-053. When I was at the CIA, both as an analyst and as an operations officer, one of the things that I hated the most was the United Nations General Assembly. It takes place every single year in September, and it brings the city to a screeching halt. My last tour in my CIA career was at the United Nations in New York. It's hard to even get within blocks of the U.S. mission to the United Nations. It's just ridiculous. And world leaders come from all over the planet to give speeches before the General Assembly. Well, the General Assembly, as it happens every year, is going to take place in September. It's also called UNGA, by the way. And these world leaders, like they do every year, are going to descend on New York. It's the Super Bowl for global politics. It's also a big deal in terms of global drama, where international leaders love to get the chance to stage on the world stage. You know, you go back and, in history, we're taught about Nikita Khrushchev pounding his shoe on the table at the General Assembly, or Fidel Castro giving a 6-hour speech, or Muammar Gaddafi coming and sleeping in a tent in Central Park because he wanted to be like one of the common people. Well, there's a major feud this year, and that's a feud between Benjamin Netanyahu and the mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani has been very public in his statements over the past week or 10 days that he's going to try to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu when Netanyahu arrives in New York and turn him over to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. We've got a short clip of Mamdani talking about this.
Last question on this topic. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is perhaps planning to visit New York for the UN General Assembly. You pledged during your campaign and after you won to order his arrest to comply with the International Criminal Court warrant. What will happen if he comes in September?
Look, I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court. And what you will find is that is an opinion that is held by many purely because of what his actions have wrought over these last many years. I've also said that I will follow the laws that we have here in New York City because I believe that there's an importance in following the law as a leader who presides over our city, and that's something that I plan to do.
Meaning? I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means.
Meaning that whatever the law allows me to do in New York City, that's what we will do, but we won't be writing our own laws to that end.
What does the law allow you to do?
That's an active conversation with our legal department in seeing what the prospects are we have here in our municipality. However, what we've seen at the national level is a desire sometimes to write your own laws, to go outside of the bounds of legality. That's not something we have an interest in.
I mean, normally when people come to a UN General Assembly, they're granted a sort of amnesty because it is the seat of the United Nations. Is that what you're thinking that you'll honor, or you're actively looking to see if you can actually arrest him?
I think we are looking at all of our legal obligations, and one of them is with regards to the United Nations. But the other part of this is we're not talking about a personal assessment of Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about the International Criminal Court and the fact that they have a warrant out for this prime minister's arrest. And I think it's important to talk about the weight that that has as a charge, and also that as the mayor of New York City, I'll be following the laws of New York City.
So Netanyahu fired back immediately at Mamdani, saying this, quote, "The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is a kangaroo court that has no jurisdiction over Americans or Israelis. Its bogus arrest warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu was issued by a disgraced former ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, a few days before allegations of sexual misconduct against him became public. It was a clear attempt by Khan to divert public attention and seek protection from scrutiny," unquote. All right. Relax. The ICC is not a kangaroo court. The ICC is the International Criminal Court. The United States and Israel do not recognize the International Criminal Court and are not parties to what is called the Rome Convention. The Rome Convention. So Mamdani is not going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is something that he's doing for his own political benefit. That's what politics is all about. Is Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal? Of course he is. Should he go to the ICC? I believe that he should, but it's not going to happen. Then came another response, this one from Ambassador Mike Waltz, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. He made several points in his comments. He said, "Mayor Mamdani, here's why your threat to arrest PM Netanyahu in New York City during UNGA is not going to happen. Number one, the U.S. is not a party to the Rome Statute that underlies the ICC. That's true. That's a shame, but it's true. Number two, the UN headquarters agreement grants diplomatic protections to visiting heads of government. Also true. Number three, head of state immunity applies. Also true. Number four, federal authority trumps any local mayor's wishes. Also true." He dismissed this as an episode of pure political theater, which it is. But it's something that should be in the public discourse. Americans should be talking about whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. They should be talking about whether or not the Iran war is something that we should be involved in. They should be talking about the effects of Israeli involvement in American politics. I'm not even really going to point out the irony, the hypocrisy that Mike Waltz is saying head of state immunity applies to Netanyahu after the U.S. broke into Nicolas Maduro's home and kidnapped the Venezuelan president in the middle of the night and arrested him on drug charges. We can have that conversation at a later time. But he is correct that Netanyahu's arrest is not going to happen unless the U.S. president orders it. And if that were to ever happen, all hell would break loose. Not going to happen. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to shoot with the same precision tech used by U.S. Special Forces? Well, good news. After years of research and development, MCG Tactical just dropped something incredible, the Stinger Combat Sight. This isn't your average red dot. Using holographic technology once reserved for elite military and law enforcement, the Stinger delivers crystal clear precision, so accurate you could hit a dime at 300 yards without even trying. This is the exact same level of technology used by the pros. But here's the twist. Most sites like this go for $600 or more, and people happily pay for it. But right now, through an exclusive deal with MCG Tactical, you can get this mil-spec site for under $200. And it gets better. For my listeners, you're getting 67% off, and they're covering the shipping. Just scan the QR code or go to mcgtac.com/John Sting to get yours today. The only catch, supply is tight, and these are already flying off the shelves. So if you want a site built for the best, now's your shot. Grab yours before they have to shut down orders. That is mcgtac.com/John Sting. I'd like to talk also about the World Cup. I have to say, I have never liked soccer. I have always found it to be the most profoundly boring sport that has ever been invented. And I'll tell you why. It started when I was a little kid. I wasn't even a little kid. I was a teenager. And there was a little clip on Saturday Night Live Weekend Update. That's the fake newscast in the middle of, it's usually at midnight on Saturday Night Live. And they made just one fleeting reference to a soccer match. And they said that the soccer game between Yemen and Saudi Arabia was decided early when Yemen built an insurmountable 1-0 lead. And I was like, exactly. It's so boring that 1-0 wins the game. And these guys just kick the ball back and forth and back and forth. And then I decided this year, maybe I'm wrong. How can 7 billion people love soccer and I don't? I must be missing something. And I was. It was actually very exciting. Once you learn the strategy of it, okay, I admit I was wrong. And so I watched the World Cup, and it was very exciting. I wanted Germany, France, and Brazil to lose because they always win. And then they all lost, so it was kind of cool and fun, and I enjoyed it. Well, Spain won last night in something of a dirty game, and not dirty on the part of the Spaniards. It was kind of dirty on the part of the Argentines, whom they defeated. And there was even a red card, which is a big deal. I want to show a clip of something that struck me as very funny. Donald Trump, of course, is a soccer fan, and he has exerted a lot of influence over FIFA, the governing body of international soccer. So last night, he was present to present the FIFA Champions Trophy to the Spanish. Can we run that clip? It's a little bit awkward for Donald Trump, who had to present the World Cup trophy to Spain. After all, the United States is the host. This is after weeks of arguing publicly with Spain's leadership. And Spain had some fun with the Trump administration as well. The Spanish media cropped Trump out of all of the celebration photos, which struck me as funny. And then afterwards, Donald Trump was answering questions posed to him by journalists. Let's cut to that one. He was asked if there's any tension between him and Spain.
I did. I spoke to Spain, and I congratulated them on having a great team. I really spoke to a lot of people. No, I have no tension. I have no tension with anybody.
You know, I have to say that I agree with the guy. Having watched Donald Trump for many years, I had the opportunity to meet him one time very briefly. So much of what he does in public is show. It's really showmanship. When he says that he doesn't have any tension with Spain, I think that he really believes that he has no tension with Spain. The Spanish may disagree, but I think Trump believes that this is all just a part of the game of politics, and there are no hard feelings. I wanted to move on to something that we started last time, talking about, well, not even talking about, I just want to reiterate how grateful I am to my fans and supporters out there who are doing so many creative things on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and elsewhere. There's a guy who posted something on Instagram that I thought was was really great. And this is how nuts things have become. Please go right ahead.
I was in the morning meeting, and the secretary came in, and she said, John, General Powell is on the phone for you. Colin Powell. I said, General Powell? How does he know who I am? And she said, I don't know, but he asked for you by name. My boss was like, well, go answer the phone. So I went to my desk, and I said, good morning, General Powell. This is John Kiriakou. And he says, John, if the Iraqis were going to kill the president, who would actually be in charge of that operation? And I said, well, if you're talking about the attempt to kill President Bush, George H.W. Bush, he had been visiting Kuwait. I said, Kuwait operations are run from the Iraqi intelligence service's Basra station. But Basra station is headed by Sabr Abdulaziz Adori, the director of the Iraqi intelligence service. He says, where does he sit? I said, Baghdad. Where exactly in Baghdad? I said, if you hold on a second, I'll look up the address. So I looked it up. I gave him the address. He says, thank you. And he hangs up the phone. I go back in the meeting. They were like, what did he want? I said, he wanted to know about Sabr Adori and the attempt to kill President Bush. Like, okay. 8 hours later, we fired 47 cruise missiles into Iraqi intelligence service headquarters. But by then it was the middle of the night in Baghdad, and we killed the janitor.
There is such a thing as having too much time on your hands. But I'm grateful. I really am. Another thing that I didn't realize until I received a cameo request was that I actually have a theme song, I guess. It's from Doja Cat called Acts of Service. I was vaguely aware of Doja Cat. I actually like the song Acts of Service. But I want to say another thing, too, relative to these clips and Doja Cat. I lost a lot of weight starting in 2022. I lost 115 pounds. I did it for medical reasons. I hate when I see videos of myself as the Fat John. I hate it to the point where I won't watch it. But apparently there are people out there who prefer the Fat John. I don't understand that at all. But they've said it to Doja Cat. Can we run that clip? Man, I don't understand that at all. I sure don't prefer the Fat John. But there it is. In all my glory, the Fat John in all his glory. I'm never going to be fat like that again. And I feel like $1 million compared to what I did. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for an overview of the news. Means a great deal to all of us. As I said, we're able to build this thing only because of you. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that so many people have liked the first few episodes of Briefing Room enough to subscribe and follow and share and talk about it and comment and what have you. And I wanted to also reiterate, we will have our very first Q&A episode coming up next month. So make sure to send your questions to jkbradmin@gmail.com. That's jkbradmin@gmail.com and put Q&A in the subject line. Please send them all in. We'll get to as many as we possibly can, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thanks again for joining us. This has been The Briefing Room. I'm John Kiriakou, and we'll see you next time.